Hi everyone, welcome to the next part, or where are we going next? If you remember last week we moved into the first chapter of the Gospel of John, and this week we're going to move just a little bit deeper into the Gospel, but not very far, just to chapter 2, first 11 verses. Now if you remember from chapter 1 of John, John was establishing some really important details having to do with Jesus, why he had appeared on the scene in Palestine in and around 30 AD or CE, Common Era, as it's known now. So he tells us first of all who Jesus is. He's the Son of God. He's the light. He's the life. He's the Creator. He is God. He's amazing. The entire Bible, in fact, can be wrapped up in these few verses of the beginning of the Gospel of John. And he then tells us where Jesus is, moving into verse 29 of John chapter 1. He says, look, this is the one I've been telling you about. Now, remember, just to confuse the issue, we've got two people named John here. We've got John the disciple and gospel writer, who is not John the Baptist. And they kind of converge in these few verses. So just try and keep them separate. It won't be hard by the next chapter. They're completely separate again. But after John the Baptist says, here he is, and John the Gospel writer puts it into the narrative, the story then becomes about Jesus. All of this just in that first chapter. And I'm going to leave you to read those verses 29, so John chapter 1, verses 29 through 34. I'll leave you to read them. John establish Jesus as the central person in the narrative, and then the story moves forward rather quickly. Jesus, first of all, gathers his first disciples. Very different story than the other Gospels. Yet, the same. In the fact that here are these men who are seeking something. They're looking for something. They've been waiting for something spiritually. They're anticipating politically, socially. They're looking for something. They're looking for the Messiah. They're waiting to see. And then here's Jesus. And Andrew says to his brother Peter, we found him. He is the Messiah. And so these men start to gather him. They start to follow him. They start to go where he goes. In spite of their doubts, in spite of their maybe misgivings, in spite of their wonderings, they see something here, and so they start on the journey with him, fledglings on a faith journey. And Jesus says to them, I actually, he says, have things to show you that you can't even begin to think about yet. It's all in John chapter 1. And so it begins. According to John, the gospel writer, the first thing they do is go to a wedding. Normal, ordinary occurrence. A social gathering. We have no idea whose wedding it is. We have no idea how or why they were included in the invitation. Somebody must know somebody, and Jesus' mother was there and his family, so there's some connection there, but we're not told any of that. Besides all of those little nitty-gritty details, I have another question. You know I like to ask questions. I like answers, but I really like the questions. According to my mom, it has ever been so. But my question here is, why is this story here, in this particular place? We're just barely introduced to Jesus, and we go to this wedding with these few people who are following him. We're not even totally sure why they're following him. What matters about this story so much that John would include it here? Almost at the beginning, certainly at the beginning of the action of this story of Jesus. So Jesus gathers a few followers. Not all of them are even named here. Only 4 of them are named, and we know he eventually has 12 who are his close inner group. I'm assuming that John, the gospel writer, is also there because he knows the story and he shares it. So 5 out of the 12, we know for sure, are with him. But right here at the beginning, without all of the characters revealed or named, John starts with the story of a wedding in Cana of Galilee. This is just the 3rd day into the story of Jesus. And here, according to John, Jesus will perform the first of all of the miracles that he will do in his ministry years. So my question continues a little bit deeper into this. Why this miracle? Why here? Most of the miracles of Jesus, if we were to run through our minds and think of the ones we are familiar with, if you do that right now, what miracles of Jesus do you think of? I would think that most of them had to do with healing, right? Or some kind of oppression, or some kind of need of freedom, or someone is lost and they need to be found, and so Jesus helps them out. But here there's no such thing. Here what we've got is a poor wedding planner who's not arranged wisely for enough wine for the celebration. Or there are too many guests, so again the wedding planner didn't plan well enough. Or maybe some of the guests are just too greedy and they drunk more than they should have. Still, it's a social issue, one that I wouldn't think had anything to do with why Jesus came. People would certainly, if it was left unresolved, they would talk about it. They would maybe even taunt about it for years. But seriously, is that why Jesus came? Read chapter 1 again. All of that majesty, all of that creation, all the power and the light, the purpose, the amazing things that John sets us up to know about Jesus. And then this first miracle seems almost anticlimactic. It's before any of Jesus' teaching, before any talk of the kingdom, before any of the normal healing miracles, the important stuff, before any parables, before the crowds, some of them following him, some of them heckling him, some plotting to kill him, before all of that becomes the norm around the life and ministry of Jesus. In fact, it would appear before anyone even really knows that Jesus is there. So here's this incident. Verse 11a, that is the first half of verse 11, says this. He says, this is the first of his miraculous signs performed in Cana in Galilee. And this is the story that John uses to launch the whole story of the Son of God on earth. Between now and Sunday, read it over. Maybe a few times. John chapter 2, the first 11 verses. See if you can sort it out. See if you can figure out why this story. Why here? What is there for you and me to understand about Jesus and his mission from this story? What matters enough about this story for John to first of all include it, and second of all, start the movie with it? What can possibly be important enough about this story to matter in my life, now or ever? Let's see what you discover about it in the next few days. Let's see what we discover about it together. Sunday morning, 10:30. See you then.